Day 0 of watching Alex Hormozi sales content. Day 47 of watching Alex Hormozi sales content. Here are his 4 most effective yet simple closing hacks and tips to help you print money in 2025. Technique number 1, the 8-mile statement. This is Hormozi's most powerful sales persuasion technique because it allows you to use integrity to build trust with a prospect by owning and admitting and being blunt about all of your deficiencies with a single statement. The degree to which someone buys directly correlates to how much they trust you. This technique, it's centered around the word but, which is using a concept called damaging admissions, which is one of my favorite sales techniques to use and leverage on a sales call because it allows us to be bluntly honest in a world where most salespeople just aren't. Pay attention to where I point your attention to with this statement. If you buy my product, you are going to make a ton of money. But it's going to take a ton of time and be a huge project to implement. You're looking at maybe 3 to 4 hours a day for 3 to 4 weeks to get this up and running. You're not thinking about all of the money you're going to make by buying my product. The only thing you're thinking about is all the work you're going to have to do to get this rolling. If you noticed in that example, it was positive statement, but negative statement. Now, if you reverse this, and have the negative statement, but positive statement, the but acts as an amplifier for the second half, the positive statement. Let's say, for example, that me and my girlfriend Amanda are complete strangers, and we virtually connect or match on the dating app Hinge, and I'm trying to convince her to go on a date with me. Listen, Amanda, I'm 5'9" on a good day. I work crazy hours, so I don't have a ton of time throughout the week that I can hang with you. I'm not the most patient guy in the world, but I'm a really, really good cook. She's probably thinking about, because of how I phrased it, all the great meals she would get out of me if she agreed to go on dates with me. I'm hoping she's not thinking, oh my God, he's 5'9". There is no chance I'm going on a date with him. The more negatives I can admit to, the more believable whatever I say after it is. And that's why I love this strategy so much, and I use it all the time on my sales calls. Because all of our products, all of our services have drawbacks, have negatives, have deficiencies. And guess what? There's a thing called Google, and our prospects will eventually find out what those deficiencies are. So why not be honest? Why not be blunt, which is what 99% of salespeople don't do, which will be a breath of fresh air and get ahead of it. The positive statement is amplified. The negative statement is diminished. Technique number 2, BAM FAM. This stands for book a meeting from a meeting. The best salespeople never leave a conversation with a prospect without having the next meeting scheduled on the books and agreed upon with that prospect. If an opportunity is still alive, it's still in your pipeline, the prospect should never end up in no man's land. Because if you leave a meeting with a prospect and not getting the next step booked, you might as well lost that opportunity, because guess what, guys? You're probably not going to close that opportunity. Here's what I do. Here's what my process looks like on my sales calls to ensure I book the next step, the next meeting on my sales calls every time. I have a sales discovery and demo call in the next 15 minutes here, and how I'm going to ensure that at the end of that conversation, I get the next step booked if the prospect is a good fit, if they're interested and want to learn more. It's not how I end the call. It starts with how I start the call with my agenda that includes an upfront contract. An upfront contract, it's a verbal agreement between a buyer and a seller that sets expectations and ensures everyone is on the same page before a meeting or a sales presentation begins. So as part of my agenda, my upfront contract might sound like this. Chris, by the end of this conversation, I'd like you to be in a position where you're either interested and we schedule a good next step that makes sense for you and your team, or you're not interested, you let me know, you're not going to hurt my feelings so we can avoid wasting time. That way, at the start of the call, I'm signaling to the prospect, hey, if you're interested, at the end of this conversation, we're going to spend 5 to 7 minutes determining, figuring out, and agreeing on a next step. I'm not going into no man's land where we leave this call where I say, hey, I'm going to email you over times. That is not going to take place. And then at the end of the call, if I feel that the discovery went well, I found a couple problems that they have that we could solve, the demo went well, I demoed to their specific use cases, they're a good fit, and they probably want to move forward in the process. I want to move forward in the process and see if I can close these folks to keep them in my pipeline. I'm going to ask the question, Chris, based on our conversation, you mind if I make a recommendation on a next step? In the 2.5, 3 years I've used that question, you mind if I make a recommendation on the next step? I've yet to have a single person say, yeah, I do mind. And that's a no-oriented question. People feel safer saying no than yes. Guys, this works nearly every time. And if I do get any sort of pushback in terms of booking the next step, I need to call that out. It sounds like I missed the mark here. It sounds like you're not interested. It sounds like this problem isn't big enough for you folks to solve. That way I can take those folks out of the pipeline. It's not a real deal, and I can focus on opportunities that do have a next step booked, because if there is not a next step booked, chances are low that opportunity is going to get closed. Technique number 3, the 3 A's framework. One of Hormozi's best sales teachings is the person asking the questions during a sales call is in control of that conversation. As a prospect starts asking us questions, especially on a sales call, if they're peppering us with questions, they've taken control, we've lost control, we're now on the defense. A common question I get asked all the time on just about every sales call is, hey Matt, what makes you different than the competition? Or hey Matt, what makes you better than the competition? Typically I'm getting asked that on a first sales call, the first time I meet with a prospect, early on in the conversation, where I don't have enough information to properly answer that question. The prospect is the judge, not me. The prospect is the judge if I answer it correctly, and I don't know what the right answer is. When a prospect asks us a question on a sales call, we want to have certainty, if we can, that we absolutely have the right answer before answering the question. So if we don't have the right answer or don't have enough information yet, we're going to use the 3 A's framework again to put us back on the offense and put us in control of that sales conversation. The first A is acknowledge. Pretty self-explanatory. We are saying, hey, I hear you, I'm with you, I'm actively listening to the conversation. Nothing much to it. Second A is associate. So we're going to associate the prospect's question with the best behavior of our best customers who got the best results from our product or service. Typically, when we're getting asked the question, hey Matt, what makes you different or what makes you better? The prospect is actually looking for reasons as to why they should not buy your product or service. So by associating, you're pulling that prospect away from not buying and pushing them towards buying. And then the third A is ask. So we're going to ask a question about their question to better understand what the right answer is, again, to put us back in control and on the offense during that sales conversation. So it might sound like this. Hey Matt, I'm curious, what makes you better than the competition? What makes us better than the competition? Great question. I get asked that all the time. In fact, XYZ company, who just implemented and deployed this solution across 3,000 of their devices last Thursday, asked the same exact question on our first conversation a couple months ago, and then we kicked off a pilot, and obviously it went well because they signed up. There's a lot that we do better than the competition, but I'm not sure which, if any of it, will be relevant to you folks. It sounds like you've either had experiences with competitive solutions in the past, or maybe you're testing out competitive solutions right now. I'm curious, what are you hoping we do better than the competition? By asking a question, using this 3 A's framework, by asking a question about their question, again, guys, it puts you back in the driver's seat of that sales conversation. Guys, this sales technique is gold. Technique number 4, decide, not buy. This is the single most important closing technique I learned from Hormozi. It's more of a mindset shift than a technique, but once you make this shift, your close rate is going to skyrocket.
And this is what we have to walk through with our prospects. When you're looking at them, you have to be like, I don't want you to buy. I want you to decide for you, not for me. I'll be the same either way, right? You're like, I'm going to be ripped and in shape. It's not going to change me, right? Like, that's not going to change. But like, it will change for you, right? So, quick note on sales ethics, and then we'll dive in. Helping someone make a decision to help themselves does not mean buying from you. That's a reiteration. You have to keep their goals at the center of the decision, and you should be happy. I mean this, because if you can shift this, truly, if you can be happy when someone decides to own the power and not work with you, then the pressure around sales disappears. It evaporates. There's no stake. The stake is, did I help them? Does that make sense? And that means that you can win every sale because you change the metric you're measuring yourself by. That's the superpower. And that's where you do make the most sales, because you don't care about the sale, because you care about the person. And the people pay who pay the most attention. So I call it paying attention. They pay for it. They pay for you to pay attention rather than talking about yourself, right? Because they don't care about you, because they're thinking about 100 other things. And this is why. Most importantly, make high-stakes decisions to help your prospects in order to best serve them. Okay, so.
Me personally, once I made the shift from it's my goal to close to it's my goal to help regardless if this person buys or does not buy my solution, I started making a lot more money and started smashing my quota. So I know this change or this technique mindset shift is gonna work for you guys too. I think this video here, it might help you out. It's your decision if you wanna watch it or not.